Vauxhall has decided it needs not one but two small SUVs in its product portfolio. This little Crossland model sitting just below the second generation Mocha crossover in the company's lineup. This is a facelift of the car we first saw back in 2017 as the Crossland X, but the more engaging front-end styling gives it an up-to-the-minute feel.
As before, this little urban SUV's target market will be suburban folk who'll use it for commuting or school run duties as a second car, and in that undemanding role it is of course very much in its element. This facelifted Crossland gets tighter damping and uprated suspension, new springs and dampers in an effort to improve body roll and to improve the ride a little, although that remains somewhat unsettled on poorer surfaces. There is apparently a new steering column too, and it's supposed to improve steering feel, although that does remain somewhat vague. At least the old PF1 platform that this car sits on remains relatively light by class standards, and this car retains the excellent 1.2 litre 3-cylinder PSA Group petrol engines that it had before in slightly updated RDE2 and Euro 6D compliant forms. We would counsel you to try to avoid the base, normally aspirated 83 PS version of this power plant. It lacks pulling power and it's saddled with an old school 5-speed manual gearbox. Most Crossland folk rightly choose this engine in turbocharged form, probably in the volume 110 PS guise, where it's mated to a 6-speed stick shifter and it gets proper mid-range pulling power for safer overtaking. The WLTP efficiency figures of this unit are very competitive too, with a combined cycle fuel figure of up to 48.7 mpg and a CO2 reading of up to 131 grams per kilometre. This engine also comes in the uprated 130 PS form that we're trying here, in which guise it can be had with a 6-speed automatic gearbox. The auto option also applies to the alternative 1.5 litre diesel variant, which comes in 110 PS form as a manual or in 120 PS guise as an auto. Buyers in the smallest SUV segment tend to prioritise aesthetics more than those in larger crossover categories, so with that in mind, it was important for Vauxhall to give this Crossland a more contemporary look and feel, which the brand is able to do here as part of the rollout of its latest design language, and that's showcased here at the front. The nose gets this so-called Vauxhall visor front panel, a single module which runs across the face of the car, containing LED headlights and the latest version of the marque's Griffin badge. In profile, the updates are harder to spot, a range of redesigned 16 and 17-inch wheels. That's about it. Move to the rear and the SUV design cues continue, clouding the reality that the Crossland doesn't actually sit much further off the ground than a typical family hatch. The high-mounted split rear lights, which smear around into the C-pillars to help with that floating roof illusion, gain dark tinting. Time to move inside. Switch to a Crossland from, say, the kind of Corsa Super Mini that flows down the same Spanish Zaragoza production line, and there's hardly any acclimatisation required at all. You don't even sit very much higher here. As for cabin updates, well, there aren't really any, although Vauxhall has made this more supportive AGR certified front seat more widely available. And as before, with this test car's sporty SRI trim, you get stripy upholstery and brightly coloured door and fascia inserts to try to lift the ambiance a bit. Otherwise, this is an accurate snapshot of where the design of small SUVs was back in 2017, with a relatively small 7 or 8-inch centre dash infotainment screen and an even more diminutive 3.5-inch one between the two clear but determinedly analogue instrument binnacle dials. Time to take your seat in the rear, and that's accessed through these wide opening rear doors. In its original form, the Crossland used to feel slightly bigger than some of its key segment rivals. The old Nissan Duke, for example, certainly felt more spacious than the old Mocha X. Both those cars, though, have now caught up, but the Crossland does retain an advantage over both and quite a few other small SUVs with its provision of this sliding rear bench here. Finally, let's have a look in the boot, which is accessed via this decently sized rectangular aperture. Push forward the backrest and up to 1255 litres of fairly flat space is opened up. Understated is a word we might use to describe the visual updates here, but the changes have given the Crossland a fresher feel. The dynamic updates, well, they're difficult to feel, but the extra efficiency and the additional camera safety kit is very welcome. Otherwise, this model is really very much as it was when it bore an X in its name. The AGR certified driver's seat, that is a real selling point, and there is a space-efficient cabin with the sliding rear bench option that you can't have in a Mokka, a car which has a much smaller boot. Plus, Crossland customers will like the trendy two-tone finishing and also the range of efficient engines, including, unusually in a small SUV, a choice of diesel units. The fact that the driving dynamics remain unremarkable will be of limited interest to likely customers. A better Crossland than this one, running on more sophisticated underpinnings, will be along in not too long. But if you've decided on a Vauxhall badged small SUV, you can't wait and you don't want to pay extra for a Mokka, then we see no reason why you'd be disappointed with this car. It's not a class leader, but it is class typical. And if that's enough for you and the price is right, then go ahead and try one.